Last panel, I need Lisa and Russell and Jim, if you would. And while they're coming up to the podium for the very last panel, I'll just begin by saying that the last topic for today is developing the global LHON community. As many of you know, it's been mentioned throughout the day, one of the primary methods of communication for this community is our LHON Facebook group. And I think it's a place where we've got about 1,600 people, almost 1,700 people now, talking about the kinds of issues we talked about today, but on a regular basis. And you can ask a question, and you'd be amazed how many people want to answer and help and tell you more. Another way the community connects, as I mentioned, I have a registration at LHON.org, so people can register, and on LHON.org, there's a registration form, and I don't have as much time to send out a blog and a newsletter as I'd like, but when I do, if you've registered, you get that information. So when there's major news in the community, I try to share that as best I can. So registering is a good way to get information, as well as the Facebook group. One of the things that's really becoming a connecting force in the community, an informational force, is we've heard the blogs throughout the day. One of the first blogs out there, It's a Happy Story. Penny Duffy has been telling the story, chronicling her journey with her young daughter, Abby. And then we've heard about Jessica's Blind Girls Can Rock Heels and Girl Gone Blind. So it's great to have people telling their stories sort of real time as things happen. There's also a book called Born with a Bomb, which was a collection of stories by Val Rudisil, and she's collected some stories of a dozen people over the years. Can be ordered online, Amazon.com. One of the things that comes from connecting through one of these avenues is people are able to connect locally. So I think I mentioned it earlier, if we can make connections locally, people can guide each other to an experienced LHON doctor, because it's not obvious or intuitive who is able to help. As we know, it's so rare. So if you connect with somebody locally, they can help, who's been through it before. They can help you find somebody who can help you medically. They can also connect you with support services, connect the patient and research community, and meet other people who understand LHON. So I think the notion of connecting locally is really important in our community. I don't know if everybody is aware, but there are actually LHON groups around the world. I only realized a couple years ago that there's a group in France called Ouvrir les yeux, Open the Eyes, and since the year 2000, they've been meeting like we're meeting today. They've been meeting all those years. They do a half-day patient kind of informational meeting in the morning, and they have the scientists in the afternoon. And so that's actually Marisol Corral-Dobrinsky. I had the privilege of being at their meeting a couple of years ago, and she was there presenting on the work that was discussed earlier today, the gene therapy work she's doing. So there's a community in France. In Sweden, they put the LHON Eye Society together in the year 2012. They've been having an annual meeting. They actually invited me to Skype in with them for this year's meeting. They have a website, they have a Facebook group, so there's a strong community in Sweden developing. In Spain, Dr. Corelli introduced me to them a couple of years ago, and they've been having an annual meeting. Actually, they just posted it. I didn't grab the photo of it, but they had T-shirts on a bunch of folks like this, and they have a Facebook group. So there's a group organized in Spain. Italy, I know they just coordinated with MitoCon being, I think, the UMDF corollary there. So they're pulling together an LHON sort of subset under MitoCon. So there's a group there. In Australia, there's a Facebook group. Argentina has a Facebook group. Germany has a Facebook group. The Netherlands has a group. So there are country-specific groups, and then there's the one I mentioned in the beginning that's kind of the international one that sort of everyone belongs to. I'd like to have Lisa, who spoke earlier, talk a little bit about what's going on in Canada, please.
Hi. LHON Canada is really in its infancy. It just got formed like in the last probably 2 months. And it's been established on Facebook so that we can support LH1 patients and their family members and provide resources. We're also hoping to get as many Canadians with LH1 registered into disease databases as soon as possible so that we have an easier way of communicating to them beyond just social media. One of the ways, I've just been recently speaking to them, but one of the ways, one organization that would like to be a part of this is Mito Canada. They have given me forms to bring to this meeting, and they would like to have patients from Canada fill out the forms so that they can start to keep records of LH1 affected families and be, again, kind of like UMDF and LHON.org, but the same thing for Canada. So if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes today to fill out those forms and let me know if you're Canadian, that would be terrific. And the other one is if you haven't already registered with Lisa at the LHON.org as well, that would be really useful so that we're not just on Facebook, but we have some way of tracking people and being able to get in touch with people. And in strengthening our sharing of information with Mito Canada, I'm hoping that we can start to keep a list of doctors treating LH1 and LH1 plus in the country if patients are specifically referred to them and needing assistance. At this point, I know that they keep a list of doctors treating mitochondrial disease. I'm not sure if they have a formal list of neuro-ophthalmologists who treat LH1 and LH1 plus, and I think that could be an added value for the Canadian LH1 patients when they are trying to find doctors. So essentially what Liz is talking about. And in Canada, we've been fortunate to just recently have a story aired on TV, on CTV, and it was a story about Mark DeMontis, and he has founded an organization called Courage Canada, and he was affected with LHON, and he started a hockey group where he's now going to families and children who are affected with visual impairments and adults, and they have visually impaired hockey. And so if anybody's interested, it's Courage Canada. It's a really interesting website. There's some great little video clips on it as well, but pretty inspiring story. And I'm hoping over the next year that maybe we could get some volunteers to maybe be comfortable putting together some resources that are available, resources for newly affected families in Canada, knowing who they should be contacting, whether it's just CNIB, whether there's other resources within the provinces that might be able to help them. And that way it might make it a little bit easier for the person's path behind them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Then we've got two representatives here from the UK, and you haven't heard from them yet today, so I'd like them both to talk about LHON organizationally in the UK, but also their own personal journeys. I introduced Jim Leader earlier in the day. For those of you who've heard references to the old Yahoo group, somebody started that and got communication going long before we had a Facebook group. And then Russell he'll tell his own story about being involved with LHON more recently. So we've got a couple perspectives from a couple of folks in the UK. Jim, do you want to go first?
Okay, thanks, Lisa. I think we've all heard many times today things that have echoed in our own experiences. When people say something, we know, I recognize that. and a very powerful comment was made in the day about what's the benefit of getting together as a group of patients, and the huge benefit is when you discuss something, they get it. They understand what you're going through, whether it's emotional, that huge roller coaster of emotions that everyone affected, directly or indirectly, has, all the way through. And we have links into the technical information, and we can actually help each other to understand. We've got to ask each other questions about everything from, is it helpful to put an elastic band on a bottle of shampoo, up to what's the latest screen reader, wonderful technology. And we have actually moved on. It's unrecognizable. When I first went blind, it was, a doctor said, you've gone blind, we don't know why, live with it. And it was 10 years before my nephew was also affected, and then they said, we have a name for it, it's LHON. We don't know much more about it. And then all this revolution happened about understanding mitochondrial genetics, and what more information is there out there? Very, very little. And a couple of people, Fred was mentioned, started pulling together what information there was and starting to use the internet, which was unrecognizable in those days. You wouldn't recognize it now. And starting to use the facilities that were there to try and contact other people around the world. And that's now grown into all of these groups all over the world. It's a condition that people are researching into, sharing research. We've gone from, we know nothing about it, well, it was named, but we know nothing about it, to people actually digging into the mechanism of LHON and talking about we now have some routes for treatment. And this is, I think, a hugely helpful group of people, all the people who get together, helping each other, and in every way we've discussed today. And we can continue that journey. We can organize ourselves across countries to help look at where we can fund research, where we can help the researchers, and where we can actually, not just share information, but help influence governments and regulatory bodies to try and speed up the process of research. So what a transformation it's been. And I think the thing that makes me most positive is how fast things are now changing, and we are now moving forward with so much information. It's a trauma, it's a terrible experience that we're sharing, but we have more positive things to say now, and we can support each other. And it is now really a global community. Thank you, Lisa.
Hi. Chuck Mohan opened the day today by talking about the need for collaboration, and I have to say that for me is one of the most important things to take. Before getting on the plane to come here, as I often do when I go to something like this, I started to think, what on earth am I doing? I'm digging into my own pocket and taking several days out of my schedule, and what actually do I hope to achieve for it that's going to help? And you can never predict what's going to happen, but for me this has been a fantastic event, fantastically encouraging in terms of the potential that we can achieve if we collaborate. What I thought Jim was going to say, but I'll tell you anyway, it's not exactly a secret. We've just set up a patient organisation in the UK, and we actually got our charitable status approved only last week. So very early stages. We've got a small steering committee of about a dozen people who've been putting that together. We'll be going public on it within the next couple of weeks. What relevance is it to people here? Well, essentially it's UK-based, it's English language, but it's not going to be in any way isolationist. This is a condition that crosses borders. LHON doesn't know the distinction between whether you're German, whether you're French, English, American, or anything else. And the more we collaborate, I think the better it is. Why did we need an organization? We've got a fantastic Facebook group. I mean, for us, it was a revelation. It's where we got 90% of our information on this condition in the early days was from that site, from direct appeals to Lissa and to other people that we met through the site. It's been outstanding for us, and long may it continue. But actually, I think we need more than just a forum for exchanging views, and we need to get more organized as a patient group. Why is that? I think we need, as Jim's alluded, we need to get a little bit more politically savvy. We need to get involved in lobbying for change where it's necessary, to make resources and facilities more available, to improve access to medicine. The experiences that everyone has had here has been completely different. It needs to be harmonized. It's not right that someone living in one state gets told one thing and someone living in another state gets told something completely different. That isn't going to change if we just grumble to each other. We've got to do something to complain about it. I think we've got to be organized to be taken seriously in patient consultations. Jim and I were both involved a couple of years ago in the UK consultation on 3-person IVF that you heard about a little earlier. But we got involved as individuals, and our opinions were the opinions of myself and my family and Jim and his family. Actually, there was provision, if we were able to speak on behalf of the LHON community, and not just in the UK, but beyond. But we didn't have the credibility, we didn't have the organization. So it's important to get a membership up for that reason as well. And then you've got the regulators and the system of controlling medication in the US or in Europe under systems like the FDA, the EMA. What most people don't realize is that these regulations are in constant flux. They're always being reviewed. We have an opportunity as a formally constituted patient group to get involved in consultations there. If we think the regulations are unfair, that they're not taking into consideration the rareness of the disease or other aspects of the disease, we have an opportunity to get in there, talk to them, and make sure that they at least consider our views, along with everyone else's, of course. And that really sort of puts me onto something else that's a bit of a hobby horse of mine just at the moment, and I should really have brought some slides, but maybe we'll do that a little bit more forcefully next year. A couple of organizations that I'm really impressed with that I've looked at lately. One is called Find a Cure, and the website is findacure.org.uk. At the moment, UK focused, but their premise is that there are certain diseases, and this condition, LHON, is most certainly one of them, that can be regarded as fundamental diseases. And I think that we're already seeing that happening. Fundamental disease is one that if you find the answer and understand that particular disease, it's like a little mini laboratory. And the learning that you get from understanding how Labour's operates and how you can actually correct that leads to great opportunities in lots of other conditions as well. Why is that important? Well, if they may not use the same term, but if the companies that are now looking at treatments for Labour's didn't believe that kind of thing as well, they wouldn't be looking. They can't possibly justify the cost of investing in research into Labour's based on the number of patients that we can offer them and the likely revenues they could earn from this condition. But if they can demonstrate efficacy in something like this and then use that as a stepping stone to something, a blockbuster for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or whatever, as it won't cure it, but it can potentially be a great treatment for it. Idebenone, as many of you may know, actually came the other way around. It started off as a prospective treatment for Alzheimer's. When it didn't really work out for Alzheimer's, it was borrowed for other treatments. Now we're going in the other direction, and I think it's an important movement. And then finally, I will finish now, I promise. There's another organization that I hadn't planned on speaking about, but some of the stories that we've been passing here, it really prompts it to me, and that's patient innovation. And if you just Google patient innovation, the website is actually patient-innovation.com. An initiative started a few months ago in Portugal, but again aimed at a global patient audience, with a lot of support from eminent professors and academics here in the US. And basically, this is a very simple concept that can sit alongside everything else we're doing, where you pick a condition. Labour's isn't represented yet, but I think it should be soon. And people just put on their tips of how they've helped themselves, how they've been able to help themselves to overcome their condition. So, for example, elastic band on a shampoo bottle, I never thought of that. My son struggles to know which bottle is which when he's in the shower. I'll go back and I'll put an elastic band on the bottle. And I'll put it on the website as well, because little things like that can make a huge difference to people's lives. Anyway, I think that's...
Thank you. So here in the United States, as you know, this was our second annual meeting that we held in conjunction with the UMDF. As you know, as you may know, the UMDF does do a 4-day scientific meeting. They do a 2-day Mito family meeting. And we've been doing this 1-day LHON meeting both last year and this year. Next year, it'll be a slightly different format. Because one of the things UMDF does is every third year they go to Washington, D.C. They take advantage of, some locals, they take advantage of having patients in the area, and they tell patient stories up on the Hill. So for anyone that wants to be a part of that, next year's meeting, we're going to have the LHON meeting on a Wednesday. So you can either come for Wednesday and leave, or you can come for Wednesday for the LHON meeting and then be available to be part of the Day on the Hill on Thursday, June 18th. So next year's meeting, there's a plan and a process. In terms of what can be done, people ask me about this group, the LHON group, and I kind of struggle with my answer because we don't really have the kind of group that Jim and Russell have put together in the UK. I mean, we do have a group, right? We're a project within the UMDF, but there isn't the structure behind it because I didn't want to take the time to put structure together. There was just too much to do. But boy, if we could put some structure together, and if we had people who wanted to step up and sort of be a part of the work that needs to be done in all these different areas for LHON, if there were folks who would like to identify themselves as being the go-to person in various regions within the United States, or if somebody's watching this video down the road and they're in a country that doesn't already have an organization and they want to put an organization together, I'd really like to help folks create those groups, because that will, help the organization be stronger, and more people will be involved. So there's need for that, and it's on your evaluation forms, or you can connect with me, and I've left my email address all over the presentation. So please feel free to contact me if anyone wants to at any time get involved. There's also, as I said, the meeting next year in DC. As you saw, some of the folks who were involved in this meeting were either like recent recruits like Maria, who happened to live close by and it was easy to grab and get involved. Bob was part of last year's meeting. Now he led one of the sessions for me, and Lisa was here last year. So I mean, anyone who's been here this year, you're deputized. I could use you next year. We could all use you next year. So anyone who wants to volunteer and help lead some portion of what next year's meeting's like, please step up, step forward, and also in your evaluation forms, think about what you'd like next year's meeting to be like, because for those who were there last year it was all science. We had 3 scientific meetings, and we had 1 genetic counselor, and a lot of the comments were, hey, we need to hear about real life. What's it like to be a patient? So guess what? That's what half of today's meeting was about. So if you want to give feedback about what you'd like a meeting to be like, and even better, if you'd like to lead that part of it, please step forward. The help would be needed. Any other programs that would be helpful, if there's some piece of what came up throughout this meeting that you want to get involved with, again, please step forward. I can help. I've gotten connected in a lot of different directions. We don't have a formal database yet of the structure that was being described that we need, but I've kept track of my friends, and I've got a lot of friends in the community. So if you are in a place and you want to get started, I can connect you with folks who are like-minded, and you can start reaching out, and we can get things started. So you're not starting from scratch. So again, anyone who wants to be a part of that, please do. Chris, I know you have that microphone. I don't know if there was anyone that wanted to ask any questions about this whole developing a global community, ask questions of our UK contingent, Canada. Any questions? And it's late in the day, I'm not surprised. Okay, great. So thank you so much, panel. Appreciate you being here. It seems like a long time ago, but this morning I mentioned that my goals for this meeting were to inform, to develop the LHON community. I hope that happened for each of you today. Chris, I know if you would take that microphone, is there anyone that on any topic wants to share thoughts, comments, questions, parting thoughts, something that came to mind? Chris, you've got the microphone, and Arif's looking for you. Something you learned, something that struck you, something you want other people to know.
And I'm a repeat one. I came here last year also. And it's fantastic, the changes you made, and it was excellent information. In my experience over the last 6.5 years, I think where we are lacking is education. I think education of the physicians. If they don't know what LHON is, even as recent as a month ago, I talked to a couple of ophthalmologists. They had no idea what I was talking about. So I think we are lacking that education. And I think the number is at 35,000 diagnosed patient. I think it's misdiagnosed are about 450,000 more. And I think if we, instead of, concentrating on a lot of other things, if we concentrate our resources through the UMDF on educating, number one, the professional community with their help, articles in their magazines. Neurologists don't know what it is. I had to go back to the ones who misdiagnosed my son and educate them when they told me that he had conversion disorder, that they were so far off of it. So I think we need to apply our resources as a group and whatever fundraisers we do. I mean, anyone who has approached me, listen knows this, for any kind of fundraising, and we have a foundation that has supported Dr. Guy for a lot of funding to carry him through his funding, and we are fortunate to be able to do it. But I think what we need is applying a lot of these funds towards education. And it has to be our goal to establish a program of educating and raise funds for that so we can spread the word and get that 450,000 misdiagnosed patients. Then the pharmaceuticals will pay attention, and NIH and the rest of them will pay attention.
I think you make a great point, Ari, thank you. And I think one of the exciting things in my mind about how we're collaborating with the UMDF is, as you say that, the first thing that pops in my mind is I know that the UMDF does that within the world of Mito already. And so we can easily leverage the skill sets, the experiences of that organization and bring the need in because they've been educating doctors who are dealing with the other systemic issues, a little bit with optic, but 90% other issues. And you're right, that's an opportunity, a possibility, and rather than starting with a blank slate, we have the opportunity to work within the UMDF because we're within the UMDF and take what they've done, develop a program, identify what that might cost, figure out how to fund it. We have the resources, the energy, so it's a great opportunity, and then how we get from here to there, which people, which resources, which internal volunteers, what do we pay for, how do we fund, all issues we can come together on, but it's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up, and I agree with you. There is a path forward, and we're in the right place to make it happen. You've got the microphone.
Yes, so my name is Mark, and I'm Chaz's dad. And I know that I've had conversations with quite a few of you here, but maybe some of them were interrupted or whatever. Is there some kind of mailing list or repository of email addresses or something like that. Maybe I could follow up with certain people later. I don't know how that works, but I'm kind of curious. So.
If you're asking how do you get email addresses of the people in the room,
If they want to. Maybe some want to, maybe some do not want to.
here's what I'll do. I'll take the action item because I have the email address of everybody who's attended the meeting. So just like I sent info about hula hands and stuff like that, I'll send something out saying, because of course, one thing that's really important is being careful with people's information. Some do, some don't. So I'll take the action item to send something out to all the attendees saying, would you care to share with the others? And then for those who do, great. For those who don't, it's totally fine. So I'll make that happen.
Yeah, just a quick thing. Just a quick thing about the educating doctors. I know with UMDF, they have physicians packages, and in September, they have a Mito Awareness Week. And I know for myself, I even got to the point where I went back to see my hometown ophthalmologist, so not my neuro-ophthalmologist. I went and saw him and said, look, I've been diagnosed with LH1+. And he said, no, you don't have that disease. Good luck in finding what your diagnosis is. And and I think really, I then asked for the physician packages. I ordered them during the UMDF sort of mitochondrial week, and I sent them out to my individual doctors in the smaller town that I live in. And I felt that made a really big difference in them understanding my disease. And it wasn't me sort of throwing something in their face. It was something that they took as something very reputable and respectfully. And it was really helpful. So I think, yeah, those packages were really helpful for me. Yeah.
I think we need to thank Lessa for all of the energy she's put into this conference and starting this whole initiative. And I'm in, I'm ready to do some more.
You've done great.
Is there a list of antibiotics or that people with LHON should not be taking?
If you look on the LHON.org website, there's actually a list of antibiotics that some of the scientific community have articulated as things to avoid. Yep, you can find it on LHON.org. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, great. Well, again, thank you for the thanks, but back at you. I appreciate everyone who volunteered to share their story today. I think it's going to be helpful not only for those who were in the room, but for folks who get to see this video down the road and weren't here. I'm always impressed by how open and honest and giving this community is. And today just proved it once again. I'd like to thank again Dr. Ui Mann, Dr. Corelli. I think it's great that they sort of brought us up to the current level of understanding of the scientific situation and really made complicated information comprehensible. It's great. Seriously, it's wonderful. Some folks who helped make this event happen, Maria and Bob, as you saw, led the groups. Appreciate that. Some folks you didn't see who live in Pittsburgh, Jenny, who had to leave early, and Kelly, who were really great supports, helpful in getting this pulled together. I mentioned earlier in the day, educational grants providers, Stealth Peptides, Santhera, Delta Gamma, Enterprise, folks who really helped keep the cost affordable for all of us to be here. That was really appreciated. To end the day, I wanted to invite the chairman of the board of the UMDF, Dan Wright, to come up and give his closing thoughts on today's events. Hi, Dan.
Wow, what a day. Last year out in California, I thought it was a phenomenal event, and I mean, this is just topped it a bunch. I do want to stress to everybody, if you've never gone to the Hill and and done your turn at lobbying, it's a great feeling. It's very empowering. It's what we're supposed to do. And so if you're going to make it to the event in Washington, try and schedule it that extra day. We've got buses. We get everybody in there, and I think it's a great feeling. One of the things I just wanted you to understand, there's on my arm I've got a green band and I've got a white band, and I think the comment before was that LHON doesn't know borders, and it goes around from all over the world. I mean, we all evolved. It's all moved. The same as in, if you think about the cell doesn't know the difference between a mitochondrial defect from LHON or something else. So we're all working together, and that's one of the things. When I popped out for today for a couple of events. Again, we're talking about therapies that are, they're getting so close. It's what I've hoped for years and years. And they're talking about viral vectors in regard to cures. Okay, I'm talking about cures that it's not going to be tomorrow, but it's on the horizon. We can really see those things. My story started 30 years ago, and my daughter started off with dystonia, and we didn't know what it was, and my daughter has LHON plus. So from the UMDF's perspective, we're hand in glove, and we're excited to see this group. We want to see it double, triple, because all working together, that's going to get us the clinical trials, because the drugs that are good for treatment for this disease will also be good for many of the other primary mitochondrial disease. They may be good for some secondary diseases too. This is just a great thing to work together. I'm very excited. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the efforts that have been put in for this event. And I think we ought to give her one more round of applause and just thank y'all.